anyway, were there any other tricks you'd like to talk about? Oh, you put a stutter drum track behind the.
Oh,
I know what
sequence,
I know.
a little sequence, a little conga sequence that was in one of my keyboards actually.
Yeah, and it just sounded
Yeah.
terrific. It had just enough
Yeah.
swing to the beat that it didn't sound mechanical. He had a friend over here,
Played sax.
Rick Wiedemann,
played sax solo on the
who
one.
just hopped in and did like sax in one take on I Can't Get There From Here. You did some
I
of the
did a little bit of sax opening
intro
set,
and
yeah.
interludes, and he did the long solo. So it just if you for one thing, we talked a minute ago about producers having a sound in mind and shooting for that sound. In this case, I was seeking to allow it to be bucolic, to take your talent and the talent of the other folks. And there's a lot of things I probably could have nixed in, Ron, not the background vocals or whatever. But in allowing these other people to create for me, I think we ended up with a...
Interesting thing, yeah. And it was fun having more people involved, obviously. It was always more fun. And coming up with a feel, you keep mentioning Steely Dan, and that was kind of maybe a touchstone we used for some of the kind of little jazzier pieces. But once again, that was basically clean, tight production as opposed to a lot of reverb and big sound. That's the Steely Dan thing we were after. I used that for, and the Rhodes piano sounds that I used in there and stuff like that.
See, we never talked about that before, but yeah.
Yeah, so that was kind of the inspiration when you said that's the kind of thing I'm leaning towards. I said, well, what makes Steely Dan Steely Dan? Okay, extremely dry, sterile, very separated instruments, and just a tight sound. And
not that we got the Steely Dan, we just had
but
flavor.
that was the inspiration of as opposed to huge reverb drums and loud, bombastic guitars and stuff. It was more of a jazz, almost a jazz feel.
Absolutely.
Everything tight and clean and not over affected, basically. So it sounded like it was in the small room,
Yeah, we only the only time we ever affected it real heavily, I think, is in When the Full Moon Loves You. I did a very affected guitar solo, but it actually harkened to some Steely Dan stuff too. So, well, anyway, so that's some cool stuff that we got to do on that particular CD.
With this,
yeah. Go figure.
This is the first standalone unit actually that was available in the country. I bought this back in about 1995.
Yeah, and by the way, the corners you get yourself painted into by the fact that you can only record 4 channels at one time. You really have to think your way around a bunch of those things.
Well, that's kind of old school though. You could think back to the Beatle days and stuff when they were recording in 4 tracks period.
Oh, Beatles! Heck, what about you and me?
Oh,
I started on a 4-track, what was it, TAC recorder that was CellSync, what they called CellSync. And I remembered pushing it to the limit, getting 12 ping-pong tracks out of it and getting some internal feedback, calling up the engineers that designed the thing and saying, I can't get this to do X, Y, or Z. And they said, it's not designed to do that. Oh, okay. Got to figure out a different way to get it done. Yeah. But yeah, no, the Beatles, they were stuck with 4 tracks, the first multi-track.
Up until through Sgt. Pepper, I think probably the White Album was when they first started using 8-track.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Wow. Okay, so I'm Ryan Michael Galloway. We don't need no sneakingrecordcompany.com. This is one of the reasons why. I'm talking to Ron Logan, and you can find Ron at, Ron Logan at yahoo.com. Just email him if you got any questions or if you want to do a project with him. He's quite reasonable and quite excellent, the stuff he comes out with. So, anyway, thanks, Ron.
Thank you, Brian.